Positive. Okay. Now call this regular meeting of the Jacksonville City Council to order. I want to welcome everyone who is in attendance tonight and all those that are watching on G10 television. To begin with tonight, I'm going to have a young man, Mr. Austin Butler, from Troop 490 of Boy Scouts of America. If you come forward, sir, and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stand for the prayer.
Our Heavenly Father, as always, we pause to give you thanks, because you are the giver of all good gifts. And as we approach Thanksgiving Day and the holiday seasons, we're ever reminded of how truly blessed we are, individually and as the city of Jacksonville. With that blessing, keep all of our hearts and minds on those who are less fortunate, and there are so many. Heavenly Father, we pray this evening for one of those blessings that you have given us, and that is our veterans who have served, and those active duty Marines who are still serving today, to give us the freedoms and the blessings and privileges that we take for granted so often day by day. Please bless them and their families. And as always, your blessings and your guidance be upon our mayor and upon our council as they deliberate our citizens' business. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Austin.
Austin.
Thank you. Good job. Austin's actually working on a Citizenship in the Nation badge. Nice to have you here. You and your mom both. Excellent. Kelsey, you've been afforded the opportunity to see the agenda for tonight's meeting. There is an add-on requested that will be added as item number 7 on the agenda. So I would entertain a motion at this time to adopt.
Motion to approve to adopt the agenda with the additional added item for number 7 for non-consent. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hear none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next, we have minutes from the November 8th, 2023.
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just all over the place here. We're going to have our first section of public comment, and no one has signed the sheet, but I will open it up for anyone that wishes to speak at public comment. All right. I have minutes from the November 8th, 2023 workshop meeting, and also 4 consent items.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Good. Item number 5 on our agenda for tonight, and this is a voluntary annexation, Gum Branch and Road in Williamsburg, and this is on behalf of Thornton Good LLC. Biscuitville has submitted a petition for voluntary annexation of a 1.06 acre tract that is contiguous to the current city limit boundaries, and Mr. Massey, you're going to present this item.
Mayor and Council, as the Mayor indicated, we're considering a request for annexation. The property that's on Gum Branch Road, immediately adjacent to Circle K gas station at Gum Branch and Western, for the purpose of a Biscuitville restaurant. The costs and revenues and the detailed analysis indicates a positive cash flow of approximately $182,000 over a 5-year period. Staff recommends the council adopt the annexation ordinance as presented. That's it.
All right, council, any questions of Mr. Massey? All right. Open up, we're going to recess the regular meeting, open up the required public hearing on this matter. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this matter? I know the owner is present with us tonight. Welcome to Jacksonville.
May I just say a few words?
Yes, sir.
So, name's Blake Jennings with Biscuitville. So it's a family business started by my grandfather. I currently run all the real estate development, and we've been working on this pad for almost over a year now. We wish to annex it just to be a part of this city. To go through your city process just with setback requirements, your landscaping requirements, and everything else is just advantageous for us, and we believe it's advantageous for y'all. And hopefully this is one of many sites that we can bring to Jacksonville.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank y'all.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing in this matter. Council, you've been asked to consider the annexation ordinance.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next. Yes, sir. Item number 6 on the agenda tonight is the stormwater ordinance update on chapter 28, and Wally Hanson will be presenting this item.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, we want to ask you to consider adoption of a new Chapter 28 of your city code, which is the stormwater ordinance. In order to get there, I'd like to give you a little bit of history of the city's stormwater program and why we're proposing to delete the ordinance that exists and completely replace it with the proposed Chapter 28 before you tonight. So just a little bit of background, Jacksonville is a Phase 2 MS4 community. What that really means is that we're under 100,000 in population and that we have a municipal separate sewer stormwater system. That's where the 4 S's come from. So basically what that means is we have a stormwater system and we have a sewer system. Our stormwater runs off primarily toward the New River, and our sewer is collected and treated. So in March of 2007, our NPDES permit became effective. NPDES is our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, I believe. I think that's what the NPDES stands for. After doing this for 20 years, you remember the acronyms and not necessarily what they mean. But the permit has 6 measures or 6 requirements that the city has to comply with. Those 6 requirements are public education, public notice, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction controls for stormwater runoff, post-construction controls for stormwater runoff, and pollution prevention. So I think the public education and public notice are pretty evident. Illicit discharge detection and elimination is basically a program where we try to identify things that should not be in the stormwater and remove them. So for example, we have dumpster pads that have grease and other things that drain from them if they're a restaurant. A lot of those restaurants actually have drains under their dumpster pad that collects that and takes it to our sewer system. So it separates that grease and other things, other pollutants that shouldn't be in the stormwater, and actually puts it in the sewer system where it's treated. Restaurants are required to have grease traps and other things. So with those grease traps, those do go to the sewer system. But if they're not maintained, they can lead to overflows or things that cause pollutants to get into our system. In addition to that, asphalt, cars and, concrete parking lots for cars and asphalt parking lots for cars and roads and those things collect oil, grease, runs off. So we have controls that remove that. So your construction controls will be to keep sediment from leaving the site, things that happen during construction. Post-construction controls are the ponds that we see all around town. There are other solutions such as stormwater boxes that have sand in them that filter the stormwater before it runs off. And we use constructive wetlands and swells and other methods. And then obviously all of that leads to pollution prevention, which is the goal of our NPDES permit. Our program has 4 primary components. The first is the stormwater ordinance, which is chapter 28 of the city code, which is what we're talking about tonight. The second is a stormwater management plan, which is required to be updated and submitted to the state periodically. And the purpose of that is to basically set goals and things that we're going to work on, and that's typically done at a staff level. And that's the performance measures we have for our stormwater program. That's also where it lists the type of education programs we're going to do and the other measures that we're going to meet in those 6 areas. Then we have a stormwater design manual. That's what we require our developers and builders to comply with as they're developing out. It's also for city projects what we comply with, and that's where the stormwater calculations take effect, and that's what tells the city, the developer, the builder, what they have to build in order to control the stormwater that runs off. And then lastly, the piece of that is the manual specification standards and design. That is a city manual. And that's, if you want to build something in the city for it to be turned over to the city for maintenance and acceptance, you have to build to that standard, which it also governs stormwater infrastructure. So tonight we're going to talk about the stormwater ordinance. That is the piece of the 4 components that regulates the stormwater program. This is what gives us as a staff our authority to develop the design manual, to enforce the design manual, to find and eliminate illicit discharges, to fine people, to actually charge them money if they do something that violates that that ordinance. So the stormwater ordinance is really the key component. So in August, we had our first ever audit. Like I said, our permit went into effect in 2007. Our stormwater ordinance actually went into effect in 2009. During that time, we built a stormwater utility, which is how we pay for some of the stormwater projects that we do, actually all of the stormwater projects that we do, in addition to our ongoing operation maintenance. But 2023 was our first ever audit of our stormwater program. So during that audit, it was actually an on-site 2-day. They went to our city facilities. They examined documents that we had. They examined our record keeping. They examined how we conduct inspections, what our notice of violations look like, what notice of violations we had pending, how many we had addressed, and what our typical operation was. In addition to that, they looked at our education program and our documentation associated with that, any illicit discharges that we had identified and how we had resolved those or held the owner accountable and made them clean those up. And then after that 2-day inspection, they took our ordinance and our documents and did their own review following that 2-day inspection. So with that, we ended up with a 20-page report. They identified 7 individual criteria that they reviewed. They did note some minor deficiencies. Those are, the key ones are listed here. What I will say is you'll notice the first one is, it says the responsible party is outdated. In the inspector's information, he had that it was Dr. Woodruff, and of course he retired. But when we went back and checked everything, including the state website, it was actually Mr. Massey, which is Generally, for our organization who owns or holds those permits, he's listed as the owner for the city. And that is the same with stormwater, water, and sewer. So if we have to go for a water permit, Public Services staff reviews it, I sign it, Mr. Massey signs it, and then it goes to the state. So we feel like we were in full compliance there, and we actually responded as such. But that was one of the minor deficiencies. In addition, they identified that we did not have an approved stormwater management plan. We did review that. What I'll say is we never did find where it was approved by the state, but Nick Lanier, our engineer, went looking because we do have a stormwater management plan. And on top of that, it is listed under the approved plans on the state's repository. So while we may not have the actual piece of paper that says it's approved, even on their website, the updated plan is there and in their repository. But aside from that, they did have some deficiencies that we needed to look at. The one before you tonight is the one that does require your action. It is Chapter 28 of the Stormwater Ordinance, or the Stormwater Ordinance. And really, the key piece there is, you know, it was adopted in 2009 based on the model ordinances and codes that existed at that time. And it has been periodically updated. Matter of fact, Mr. Carter went through it and found some of those updates, but it does not completely look like the state's model ordinance. So when the state was reviewing it, especially on site, we would pull it up on our screen and go through it. And when that inspector was looking for section 108, we didn't have a section 108. So then we had to get into what was the language that he was looking for and find it in our ordinance. And some of those we had and some differed slightly because of changes over time. So what they found with our stormwater ordinance is that we needed to update our ordinance. And our ordinance comprises of two key articles. The first is the stormwater utility. That is where we charge our residents that own property in the city a fee based on the impervious surface area that they have. So our fee is $5 per month, and it's based on an ERU, which is an equivalent residential unit. That figure is actually 2,850 square feet. So if you own a business in Jacksonville and it's got a roof, a parking lot, and maybe a shed or a storage container or something that water cannot penetrate, then you would pay $5 for every 2,850 square feet. And that's per month. If you own, all you own is a house, you're a resident, then you call it your $5 stormwater fee because that's what it is. It's a residence pays $5 and a commercial business pays $5 for every 2,850 square feet. And one of the largest contributors, maybe the largest contributor to the stormwater fund is the city of Jacksonville because we pay for all of our impervious surface also. So we pay for all of our streets, we pay for our sidewalks, we pay for all of our city buildings, all of our city-owned parking lots, the same $5 for every 2,850 square feet. The only changes we propose to Article 1 is to the definitions. Because what we found is in Article 1, we had definitions, and in Article 2, we had the same definitions, and in some cases, both were outdated. So what we decided to do was take Article 1 and reference the definitions that we were updating in Article 2 to match the current state definitions. So the only change to Article 1 is the reference to definitions in Article 2, and I think it's actually Section 6 of Article 2. So the real changes came in Article 2. And you have in your agenda packet a full list of all of the changes we made. We tried to make it into one page, but it didn't quite fit. But we did try to summarize every change that we made. But I think the important piece to this is what we're doing is trying to align our stormwater ordinance with the state's stormwater model ordinance, all the way down to the section letter and term used. So that way, in the future, when somebody is audited, and if it takes another 15 years or whatever, then it might not be me that's here. But at that time, they can pull up and say, go to section 108, and our section 108 matches their section 108. Or better yet, if you're a developer or a builder that works in the city of Jacksonville, but works in Onslow County and maybe Holly Ridge or Brunswick County, that ordinance number matches wherever you're working because it matches the state's ordinance. So we are actually aligning ourselves with the state's model, terms, and the key pieces. There were a few areas where we differed, and I'll point those out real quick. One of the main ones was that in our appeals, we actually had, if you appealed the stormwater program manager's decision, you would go to the city manager. After the city manager, you would go to the Board of Adjustment. After the Board of Adjustment, you would go to Superior Court. We eliminated Board of Adjustment, and I can tell you in the 15 years that we've been doing this, we've never had anybody really appeal the city manager's decision. Because where we had somebody appeal that, we queried the state and asked them to make sure that we were in alignment with what we were requiring. And if we weren't, we adjusted. And if we were, we upheld our decision. And then there were a few where Mr. Carter had issued some based on, questions or appeals or, where we went to the state and their opinion differed from what we were thinking, from our interpretation. Mr. Carter had actually issued some interpretations. Is that what we called them?
The existing ordinance gave me authority to do some legal interpretations, and there's 2 or 3 at the back of the ordinance.
So all of that has now been either incorporated as part of the ordinance, or that appeal does not now go to the Board of Adjustment. It goes straight to, if they don't agree with Mr. Ray, they can sue us. And I'm quoting Mr. Carter on that. So, but from there, the only other major, and I won't say major change, we had a 50-foot buffer setback listed in our ordinance. The state model ordinance is 30. But the state requirement actually depends on where you're located. If you're located somewhere very close to the river, it's 50. If you're located somewhere, away from the, Western Boulevard and there's no stream, then it's 30. So we modeled that 30 and we added in language that says, or is identified by the state. So, and we did that in a couple of locations. So if the state goes from 30 to 20, then we don't necessarily have to come back immediately and update that 30. We would refer to the state on their definition because legislatively, those are things that have changed over time. So those are the key changes to the ordinance. What I will say is it looks vastly different than it did, but that's because we updated the format to follow the state's model. So with that, before I give you what our recommendation is, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Carter. He has something to share with you.
Thank you, Wally. I just wanted to share a couple things. I think a few of you were here back in 2009 in one way or the other, and will recall you had a stakeholders group that actually met and worked with the consultant and actually came up with the ordinance that we have today. So I told Wally, I said, Wally, if you want to get this across the finish line, you need to contact some of these stakeholders that were in that group then and so forth. So you got an email today. One was from Dave Newsom, who was with Crystal Coast Engineering. And Dave, just to quote, he says, I applaud the efforts of Wally and Nick Lanier, and it seems like the changes that I believe these changes will be beneficial to everyone. So that's Dave's thing. I got a call this afternoon from Mr. John Pierce. And Mr. Pierce couldn't be here this evening. He's out cutting collards because he wants to get them cut before the rain comes so they can get them chopped up tomorrow and have them for Thanksgiving. So I gave him an excused absence. But he did call to tell me how much he supported the efforts of Wally and Nick in moving forward with adopting the state's plan, and it just makes it more uniform for them since they do business in different jurisdictions and so forth. So again, those two are clearly in favor of it, and I certainly support it also. Thank you.
And before I give a recommendation, we don't need to leave out Pat.
No.
Pat is instrumental in the stormwater program. She does a lot of heavy lifting. She is our water quality program, and she has brought us a lot of grant funds. I mean, most notably the Oyster Highway that the city has no money invested in. It's all done through grant funds. We've just done some in-kind with staff. So she has done a lot of heavy lifting also on our stormwater program. So with that, our recommendation would be that you adopt Chapter 28 as is presented tonight of the city code in its entirety to replace the existing Chapter 28. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, Wally? Counselor, you've been asked to consider this change in the, this update in the ordinance, stormwater ordinance.
Move that we approve in its entirety for Chapter 28 as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Next, we add on number 7, and this is the phase 1 of our ERP implementation update. ERP meaning, we just found this out, by the way, Enterprise Resource Program. I knew it was having to do with records, but go ahead and explain it, Aaron.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about IT, but I am going to ruin it a little bit with some finance discussion at the end. The ERP is it's Enterprise Resource Planning, and it is the city-wide software that we use, finance, payroll, work orders, the entire software package is used citywide. As you know, we've, I think, given a couple of updates now. We started talking early on about we had a big project coming and it would be expensive, and you know, we sort of talked about the process. We hired the consultant way back to help us with that. But the main objectives of the project are to replace our outdated software that we do have. Our software we've had since 1997, so it is not you know, very modern, and we have a lot of modifications that have been made to it, a lot of different pieces that we are working off of. We've attached things to make, you know, to make it work with where we are today. So we definitely, it's time to streamline our business processes and our capabilities. You know, we can add things like workflows that we don't currently have. We can have portals for employees as far as HR, portals for citizens, you know, and then just modernization of the technology to improve our efficiency and productivity day to day. Again, the workflows, the mobility aspect, where right now, you know, for me, approving things, I have to be on my computer at my desk pretty much, whereas with the new systems, there's a lot of mobile apps and things like that to just improve the efficiency. And then dashboards and reporting, more automation, less paper. We still, at the city, use a lot of paper, so we're trying to get away from that some. And this is our timeline for phase 1. We did split this project into 2 phases, just the enormity of the project, as well as splitting it into phases allows us more opportunities for more vendors. So if you know, think about someone, a vendor trying to bid on the entire software packages that covers everything that the city does, it would be a lot. So this gives us opportunity to have more responses to the RFPs. So we started with the business needs assessment and RFP number 1, and this was helped, we had Barry Dunn. This is where we hired the consultant to help us do that. And we issued that RFP, well, we worked through that process from August of 22 through April of 23. And then over the summer, we had the vendors that responded come and do the demonstrations, and we completed reference checks and scored them. And during that process, we did involve city staff from all departments to see those demonstrations and provide input. And then August to now, we have gone through the vendor selection process and started the contract negotiations. We've had various meetings to lay out a scope of work and make sure that we have everything included that we need to. And then this brings us to our preferred vendors. We did select Univeris for the financials, utility billing, and payroll modules, and then NeoGov for the human resources modules. And NeoGov is a vendor that we do use currently for some of our HR. This is the implementation timeline that we're currently looking at for the various products. The timeline does differ based on the modules, and we did opt for a realistic timeline. They did offer in the beginning shorter timelines, but knowing the resources that we have, we think slow and steady wins the race, and we don't want to rush through. So the plan right now is to start everything in December. Once we can get the contracts executed, we'll start right away. And then utility billing and payroll will be implemented in January of 2025 with Univeris. And then human resources would be implemented January 2025 with NeoGov. So it'd be a year on those implementations. And then the financials is a little bit more involved, so that process would be about 18 months. And we would hope to go live in July 2025, so it would be at the start of the fiscal year. And this is the finance piece, the not as fun part. But for phase one, there are one-time implementation costs of $1.02 million. The Univeris side of that, which again is the financial piece, is $985,000, and then NeoGov is a smaller amount because we are already using NeoGov for some modules, so this is just an addition of a couple of modules that we don't have. And this is the budget amendment that is before you this evening is for this $1.02 million. And we did, I have closed a project, and that's where a portion of the funds are coming from, and that is a project that is, if you'll notice, it's called an AS400 server, which is hardware that we will no longer need when we implement Univeris. So we're going to close that project and use those funds as part of the funding for these one-time costs. And then the remaining amount will come from the ITS fund balance. You know, for the last several years when we've talked about this project, Gail made a wise decision to let that fund balance, you know, build up a little bit in the IT fund so that we have that when the time comes and we wouldn't have to appropriate general fund money to the project. And then beginning in FY25, for only phase one, we will have a second phase to come, but the annual maintenance cost will be $429,000. Univeris being $326,000 and NeoGov $102,000. And these maintenance costs will continue every year, and they will have structured annual increases somewhere between 3% and 5%, most likely. So that is the ongoing cost of the software. And that is all the slides that I have. We do have a staff recommendation on the agenda item to approve the budget amendment as presented, and then authorize Mr. Ray to sign the contracts for Univeris and NeoGov. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
I'm assuming this includes training for all of this, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
it will include complete training for all employees that will be using the system. And it is really everyone with the HR because it's our timekeeping as well. So it includes training and then travel for the implementation team to be here a certain number of visits and all of that. To make sure that we know.
Conversion of data.
Yes, the conversion of the data from the old system into this one as well.
Let's back up to the last slide, please. That $429,000 annual maintenance cost, you say, is a perpetual thing? Why is it so high?
Well, it is, it is high, but it is actually lower, the lowest of the bids that we did receive. And the reason that it's so high is, I don't know, IT is expensive. And it is software as a service, so those maintenance costs do continue. But I will say that our maintenance right now is expensive for what we currently have, and that the way that our software is outdated. I tried to come up with an exact figure, which is difficult because this is only phase one and there's another phase two to come. But if we isolate out the maintenance costs for just these modules and the hardware, and annualize that, it's about $300,000 a year. So that's what we're paying currently. So it's a lot of money, but not that much more. We're getting a lot more efficiency.
But you're not having to cover cost on your AS400 either, using this, right?
You're right, Mayor, and that's, part of the challenge here is looking at the hardware versus doing a lot of these things in the cloud. And as Sabrina said, when we're not having to have those capital costs every year, you tie that into where it's going to be in the cloud, because Univeris and NeoGov, they're going to have to maintain our data, not only off-site, but then secondary off-site, so that we have that backup that we have to have. The example on the NeoGov contract, the new contract with the additional modules that Sabrina pointed out, is $22,000 more. So currently, we're paying NeoGov approximately $80,000 a year for the modules that we're using. We add the 3 additional modules, and that'll kick it up to the 102 for this. So apples to apples, you see a smaller increase, but we're going to have more functionality and more efficiency out of the individual software that we're going to be using.
Right, and there are some things that come with the hardware that we won't have, when we move to this cloud-based solution where, we pay right now for a technician for IBM, we pay that annually for him to come out.
How
And I
much
think
do
we pay,
you think you're paying for that?
I think we pay him like $30,000 a year. And it's worth it when something breaks, as has happened, and he's had to come in the middle of the night or be available for a call. But those are costs and risk that are now taken on by the software company and not us here at the city. So, okay. And then, just to kind of touch on the efficiency aspect, I can't speak for all the departments, but for myself, I know that in the areas of utility billing and payroll, as the city continues to grow, eventually I would be in front of you probably asking for another person for payroll or another person for utility billing. And I'm not going to say I'm never going to ask for that, but I will say that this will create a lot of efficiencies. It will change the way we do business in a lot of ways. And I think we'll make it a few more years without adding any additional staff, at least in my area.
Well, it looks like we did pretty good, got our money's worth out of the 26 years that we've had.
Yes, I would say so. And I often say I think it's great software for being, from 1997, it served us well, and we know how to make it work. So.
And this is 100% cloud-based?
Yes.
Okay. This is very interesting, and I think this is a proactive approach to go towards, because I just attended the National League of Cities City Summit Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and approximately 3 years ago, when their whole entire system was hacked, there was segregated populations of the city's technology that was cloud-based and others wasn't. So for the city to be able to function somewhat with the cloud-based while they try to retrieve the other information, they learned very quickly that moving forward, 100% cloud-based was the way to go for the viability of the city. So good job.
Very good. Thanks.
One more comment.
Yes, sir.
Since Terrence is not here, we're speaking for Terrence. But based on what Dr. Washington said, a lot of our challenges where you have those openings in your system where hackers come in and they start to perpetrate the system, and then they go and do like Atlanta and they take over the financials and hold them hostage. Terrence has been pushing our team to move through updating software so we're not working with out-of-date software that may not have the protections that we need, so that we don't have those issues. Terrence has done an amazing job. He and his team have safeguarded our system. A lot of these software improvements are going to help us with that security aspect. And I think that's one of the things you'll see too, Mayor. As security increases, that cost is gonna go a little bit, but it's.
I wish he was here tonight to tell us the number of intrusion attempts that are made is phenomenal.
It's
The
crazy.
number.
It's amazing to see the number of blocks that his team has on a daily basis that just shows what we've got to do to make sure that, and Atlanta's not the only city. They're one of the larger cities that have been hacked, but there are so many, especially here, even in North Carolina, that we see consistently. So we're just trying to play good defense.
Well, things are changing now in IT and everywhere. It used to be a person hacking, now it's a script and AI. So the multiplication factor is because it's just running on autopilot. But I agree, the expense that we see rise here on the front and even on the ongoing will be offset by the reduction in hardware and maintenance and break fix repairs locally, as well as the efficiency that you'll gain. It's a good move.
Anybody else? Thank you, Sabrina. Very good presentation. Council, you're being asked to adopt the attached budget amendment and authorize the city manager to execute contracts with the preferred vendors for phase 1 of the ERP implementation, Universe and NeoGov.
Recommendation of adoption of the presentation as presented.
I have a second down the row here. Any other discussion? Here none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. All right, that takes care of that. We're going to move on to our reports. And I'll start real quick. I had a meeting this past Thursday with with MCIA's command and Sergeant Major. Had a very productive luncheon meeting. We had hosted them here at City Hall and had a good conversation. It was a good indoctrination for Colonel Garcia and, as to what we do here at the city. And I think we're going to continue the great relationship that we have with our base command structure. Also, we had the holiday parade. It was the biggest one I ever seen since I've been doing it. It was a very, very good turnout. But the key is, it was one of the most beautiful days for a holiday parade I've ever seen. It was more like it was a Chamber of Commerce Day. That's who sponsored the parade. So what they call it, Chamber of Commerce Day in Jacksonville. And today I attended a appreciation breakfast over at the Infant of Prague Church for first responders and others, and had a good turnout for that. Had a lot of our police, sheriffs, firefighters, EMS folks, and some of our city employees were there. Anyway, that's my report, Mayor Pro Tem.
We had an on-WASA meeting last week, and the major item of business was finalizing the purchase of the Flores public sewer utility along with the Webb sewer plant. And for the financing of the, what is it, Bob, 40-some million? The interest rate we got was 4.97, which beat the forecast, so that was a good point. So that's my report for on-WASA.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Sosa.
No report, just happy to be here.
Dr. Washington.
I have a report. Last week, I represented the city at the 2003 National League of Cities City Summit. But before I give that report, I want to say congratulations to you, Mayor Phillips, and to you, Mr. Sosa, on your reelection.
Right back at you.
You as well.
So the 4 tenets that was really discussed at this summit, really nothing that we haven't been talking about in the city. Of course, number 1 is infrastructure. Number 2 was addressing affordable housing and the homelessness. Number 3 was looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion for municipality workforce, and the REAL initiative, the training for council members and staff. The REAL basically had a first-time initiative in which about 42 cities applied for that initiative, and 8 was basically participated. So for the past year, every quarter, these cities met in Washington, D.C. to get the extensive training with regards to race, equity, and leadership within their own municipalities and how to advance racial equity in their municipalities. Also, out of this, just want to make aware that the National Day of Racial Healing actually next year is going to be January 16th. So the push is for each municipality to begin to prepare and to participate with its own events in their cities to basically support the Racial Day of Healing. With regards to the annual business meeting, and I promise I will keep this short, the 7 constituencies passed several different resolutions that came before the election body that was voted upon. And with regards to the community and economic development, the 2 resolutions that was really at the forefront was resolution number 2024-17, urging the Department of Housing and Urban Development to enact safeguards against abuses in contracts and deeds, and also Resolution 2024-19, urging Congress to enable housing vouchers for home ownership opportunities and local innovations in attainable housing. In regards to the Energy, Environment, and National Resources, also known as ENER, Resolution 2024-7, supporting and advancing resilient communities to prepare for changing climate and extreme weather events, and 2024-10, Mr. Hansen would, like this one, increase federal funding for water infrastructure. With FAIR, which stands for Fair Administration and Intergovernment Relations, our Fair Advocacy Committee, Resolution 2024-2, support of the John Lewis Voting Rights Acts, and Resolution 2024-5, support of voter protection and promoting access to the ballot box. For Human Development, or HD, my former committee where I was the vice chair, we had several, and it was very difficult to choose between these because they're all important, no certain order. But Resolution 2024-21, support of action by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention to study and address the current violence in America. 2024-25 resolution in support of the Equality Act. Resolution 2024-26 in support of mothers in the workforce, and Resolution 2024-27 in support of equal pay for women in the workforce. Our information technology communication, Resolution 2024-36 for local government support of community municipality broadband network. Resolution 2024-41 in support of digital equity for American cities, and 2024-42 local principles for the governance of generative artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence became a theme that was overshadowing the this particular conference, because the conference was really looking at how artificial intelligence is now going to start to move cities forward, and how do we strategically use AI in terms of all of our departments that can best suit the best practices for our cities. When we look at public safety and crime prevention, Resolution 2024-29, in support of federal efforts to recruit and retain a diverse public safety workforce. Resolution 2024-30, urging the federal government to provide direct funding similar to the ARPA funding and assistance to cities, towns, and villages to support violent programs and violence prevention programs. Resolution 2024-31, transforming the nation's 911 system for enhancement of crisis response and support. and Resolution 2024-34, urging the federal government to support local government efforts to prevent and respond to mass shootings, and Resolution 2024-35, support of a comprehensive substance abuse disorder solutions, additional resources for law enforcement, and combating fentanyl trafficking. And finally, the Transportation Infrastructure Services Resolution 2024-28, a call to Congress to partner with local government for infrastructure building. And Mayor Phillips and Council, that's my report.
They had quite a full slate, didn't they?
They did. Oh, and by the way, I'm not quite sure what happened, but we did have a quorum for the annual business meeting, but unfortunately, my credentials were not sent up. So unfortunately, I could not represent the city of Jacksonville and vote on these at the annual business meetings with these resolutions. I'm not quite sure what happened, but the city of Jacksonville did not have a vote this year.
Did it?
That concludes my report, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Edwards?
Thank you, sir. I just want to say thank you to Michael Collins. He's our Deputy Director of Public Services. He attended a resilience workshop with me that was offered through the Eastern Carolina Council recently. It was a very good workshop. I probably learned more than he did because he was the expert and I was not the expert in public services, but it was a very good event, and I was very thankful he was able to come along and attend with. Of course, we have, some holiday stuff coming up. Happy Thanksgiving. I like Mr. Pierce was out cutting collards. I'll be cooking some tomorrow. I also wanted to give a shout out and a special thank you to our city media team, city services media team. They have been phenomenal. Specifically, this time I will say thank you for their participation and support of the Freedom Fountain observance that we had earlier this month, and the Red, White, and Salute, and then all of the other activities and events that centered around honoring veterans in our community. It was a lot of things going on in a 2-week period. They're used to that, I suppose, but I just want to say thank you and tell them we appreciate their help and support for all these events that we have going on. And then finally, I'll mention for those who are interested, on Sunday, the 26th, which is this coming Sunday right after Thanksgiving, for anyone who would like to stand in prayer for Israel, Representative Philip Shepard will be here leading prayer, and it will be at the Freedom Fountain at 6 p.m. Sunday evening. I'll be there, and you are welcome to join anyone who wants to come. It's open to the public. Thank you.
I would just say on behalf of I'm going to speak for the mayor and the rest of the council, I just want to wish the citizens of Jacksonville and Onslow County a very happy Thanksgiving. May it be a blessed and joyful time for each and every one of you.
So when did you learn how to cook collards?
I didn't realize they grew them in Arizona.
They don't grow them in Arizona, but my family hails from Arkansas and Oklahoma, so I had a little training.
Gotcha. Mr. Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity. I do want to fact check 2 points that was made earlier. First is that Mr. Hansen hasn't turned in his retirement for 15 years, so that concept that he would leave in 15 years seems a little bit ridiculous to me. And the second thing is just to point out that Ms. Adams stated she would not be asking for any new personnel for finance for the next 5 years. So I just want to make that clear before we looked at our one city moment, Mayor. And then to piggyback off what Ms. Edwards said in support of our activities for this month, I want to change up a couple of things that we're doing. So we want to pull a couple of items out of the one city moment. We're going to do it tonight real quick for the council to see, but November is a special month for us, and we have multiple months that we appreciate different groups of people or activities. November is our National Veterans and Military Families Month, and so some of those items that you mentioned, they are all part of our tributes throughout the month. Excuse me. It starts out with the Yellow Ribbon Project, and you see multiple members throughout the community, as well as our Civic Affairs Committee out actively starting off our month saying we appreciate those people within our community that are our, whether they're active or they're retired or their previous service men and women that are serving our country and their families. Big deal for us as a community, because as our seal shows that we're a caring community, a big part of that care goes for our military men and women and their families. We follow that up with a 241-mile run. You see that shown right here. An awesome experience for us in a community in honor of a group of people in that.
I think that's Mr. Bittner.
I was going to say platoon, but that's not the word I'm looking for.
Is that Mr. Bittner?
Thank you.
Don't it look like him?
Mr. Bittner's running with this group. Is that Dr. Washington?
Yeah, I think that's Mr. Bittner.
So multiple experiences here. We have the candlelight vigil here that's held throughout every year, also part of our observations. Then you see the Beirut Memorial at 40 this year. This was, just like the mayor said with the parade, this has got to be one of the greatest turnouts we've seen to remember Beirut. We had multiple members of not only the community there, Commander Garcia, General Smith, Secretary of State Del Toro, Colonel Garrity, and General Gray was here once again. I think overall, this group right here just shows the importance of Beirut for our community. Freedom Fountain Observance, you'll see General Stewart, who is the CEO of our Marine Museum. He was the honorary speaker this year. A great weather event again. We just enjoy this while we have it, and an awesome opportunity for us to pull together as a community. And this was also hosted by the Civic Affairs Committee. You'll see here pouring the water back into the fountain, which is a good community activity for all of us to be involved in. Red, white, and salute, having this over at the Commons. Multiple activities throughout that day. Live music by 20 Ride, that's who you see here. Patriotic laser show, which, if for nothing else, if you didn't see it in person, just this picture here shows you how incredible that is. And then we had multiple military tanks and food trucks, a beer garden, games for kids. A great activity for everyone involved. The Veterans Parade, Mayor already took the thunder there, to multiple parade events where we're able to bring people out and to see some of the recognitions that we have within the community. You see our Boy Scout troop here included within the group. The Onslow Veterans Powwow, we've talked about this event multiple times. You'll see, I think this is most of the dancers that were involved at the powwow that day, but an amazing event for us looking at the diversity of our community. And this is for our veterans that are involved. And that was the first part of the month. So, when you're starting the month off this strong and you're having events going through it's just impressive to see what we're doing as a community. The Walk of Honor is incredible. As you go through the Memorial Gardens, you're going to see the remembrance for all of our veterans here within the community. Not just Marines, as you'll see here, but you have Air Force and all walks of military included in our Walk of Honor. The county put forth this documentary this year. It's kind of unique in what they did. It's called The Veterans Battlefield, and they showed this at the main branch of the library. But this is all part of our story. This is all part of our community, how we're pulling together to appreciate our veterans and families included. And then we have our Veterans Awards. You'll see just a couple pictures here, but we had multiple veterans that were recognized with our Veterans Awards. That's a really fun time for us as staff and for the mayor to come in, because we bring the veterans in. They do receive their pin, they do receive their plaque, and as it says, it's a certificate of recognition because we want to recognize our veterans each and every year. Great group. And then the last part here is, it is Operation Greenlight. A lot of times we have the opportunity to change the light bulb at our houses to say thank you to people. Well, the green light comes back to our military personnel. So if you're able to change a light bulb and you want to come in and pick up a green light bulb just to show that, there's still some time through the month of November to show that appreciation. So it starts with a ribbon and it continues through with the green light. But overall, what it is it's just appreciating and recognizing our military men and women and their families as they serve not only our community, but they serve our country. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Josh. Mr. Carter? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? I'm sorry. Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.